It was just cloudy, but then it started to pour rain. I actually flew the drone quickly, not as much as I wanted to anyways. And what's going on today? How about this one? It's kind of interesting with that thought of drone regulations, how there's often conflicts between local laws and federal ones. This one has kind of a twist too, which actually still makes me wonder if it's even valid. This one says, will residential drone use ordinance fly in Brunswick? Use of the sky above Brunswick may soon be controlled by the city as City Council considers an ordinance to regulate unmanned aircraft systems. Council is scheduled to have its second reading of the proposed ordinance at its September 25th regular meeting. The new law would both define an unmanned aircraft system, otherwise known as a drone, and restrict use of the aircraft in certain areas of the city. The ordinance would require UAS users to have a current Federal Aviation Association registration and would restrict use in any airspace within or over the city limit that the FAA has restricted unless the operator has previous FAA approval to fly there. Violators could face local misdemeanor charges and incidents would be reviewed for a possible violation of federal civil and criminal statutes. The ordinance states that doesn't actually make sense because if you're making, let's just say, some kind of ordinance here based on the federal law, then the federal law, for example, for things like the micro drones, as long as they say you're not doing it for commercial use and so forth in the US, you could technically fly it. So how does this actually help in any way? In asking that, maybe this is the reason, because apparently I guess the police say this will enable them to, I guess, potentially fine people and so forth. It says Police Chief Brian Olin said the Brunswick Police Department has received some complaints of drone use in residential areas, but there is currently no city ordinance to specifically address harassment by drone. If somebody calls to complain about a drone as a nuisance, we would have a probable cause if this ordinance were passed. Olin said. In a September 11th memo to the council, Olin and City Manager Carl DeForest stated that the city has received complaints about UAS use in residential areas that potentially violate local ordinance regarding trespassing, noise disturbance, voyeurism, and harassment. Again, with all this, aren't there already existing laws? I don't see what the reason for this is. Because even in reading this, it makes me wonder, is it actually putting someone in danger, or is it just people don't like it, for example? It says Grafton Road resident Karen Tyler spoke in support of the ordinance at the September 11th City Council meeting, stating that her neighbor regularly flies and hovers his drone over her property and out of his line of sight. Tyler said she is concerned that someone could get hurt if the operator is unable to physically see the drone as he is flying it, saying, "I want him to be more responsible for this drone," she said. The neighbor, Grafton Road resident Jerry Bollington, denied harassing his neighbors and said he flies his UAS between 120 feet and 180 feet at around 60 miles per hour, adding that hovering and other maneuvers could lead to him crashing the aircraft, which cost thousands of dollars. So it makes me wonder there, again, are people actually doing something wrong, or is it just people, quote, don't like it based on things like perception and hysteria? And it says here, the quote, the guy says, "Most of us who do this as a hobby do it for the thrill of the hobby." Bullington said, "A lot of people have misconceptions about drones." That is true. But again, I wonder what is the purpose of this, because if someone is doing something bad like they say, voyeurism and all that, again, there's existing laws for that. All this does is basically reinforce people's prejudice and stereotypes, in my opinion. What would you think about this? And in terms of more drones, I guess, flying around various places, this one says here, Zipline got a waiver to fly beyond visual line of sight. It says FAA clears way for autonomous aviation in the US, unlocks major drone delivery expansion with Zipline decision. Kind of interesting to think about too, just based on that previous story of the lady saying this guy's flying beyond visual line of sight and all that. It says today the US Federal Aviation Administration authorized Zipline to make commercial deliveries beyond visual line of sight without visual observers, a milestone the entire industry has worked to achieve for years. For more than a decade, even the most advanced long-range drone deliveries in the US required visual observers stationed on the ground along a route to watch the sky during the delivery. This historic decision will help enable broad integration of autonomous aircraft into the US national airspace and make commercial drone delivery scalable and affordable. Again, this company is kind of the best example where they had to get out of the US and do their operations elsewhere because the rules were so over the top. And I guess now the US is kind of catching up, saying, okay, use your tech locally and all that. you're gonna see stuff like this, I guess, more often, and you can't, in my opinion, say, oh, this is safe and now that one isn't all of a sudden, like when someone's flying a toy. I mean, you need some consistency. There's just way too much misconception, in my opinion, with the tech. And this was kind of interesting as it related to this platform, YouTube, how they suspended somebody, I guess, because of something controversial, which is kind of weird to think about based on history anyways. This one says, YouTube suspends Russel Brand from advert income. That's basically a common thing where in the past or even currently, many times when people talk about a certain topic, they would just say ban or demonetize people. It says YouTube has suspended Russel Brand's channel for making money from adverts for, quote, violating its creator responsibility policy. The video platform said it was taking action to protect its users. Meanwhile, the BBC said it had removed some programs featuring the comedian and actor from its streaming services. It comes after he was accused of rape and sexual assaults between 2006 and 2013. He denies the claims, saying his relationships were always consensual. The BBC said it had removed some of the content that now falls below public expectations from iPlayer and BBC Sounds. And this is the part that's kind of interesting to think about. It says here what YouTube said: if a creator's off-platform behavior harms our users, employees, or ecosystem, we take action. It says YouTube's decision to block his revenue stream applies to all channels that may be owned or operated by the 48-year-old, it confirmed to the BBC. Other channels associated with his main YouTube, including Awakening with Russell, Stay Free with Russel Brand, and Football is Nice, which have about 500,000 subscribers between them. So what I found really weird about this is, essentially, to my understanding, this is an allegation that hasn't been fully proven yet, but they decided to take, I guess, the extra step to say, okay, we're gonna block this guy in that way, which doesn't make sense, as I've never seen this happen before. When you hear things like celebrity scandals, for example, like those type of things, I've never seen them just jump the gun and say, okay, we're gonna stop monetizing this guy and all that because there's an allegation out there. So that's kind of weird. As to possible explanations, I mean, that's one side where they say they're protecting people. I guess the other argument from what I've read is people are arguing because he's saying a lot of counter viewpoints in terms of what a lot of the popular opinions are nowadays for certain topics. So with that controversy, some people are saying they're trying to censor him with this. I guess in some ways you don't know, because we don't know all the facts. I just know from reading this stuff, there were some reports, for example, medias and so forth, they were approaching his ex-girlfriends. Some of them said they never had a problem, but then they're saying they never aired their opinions because it doesn't fit like a narrative. I don't know. It could go either way, in my opinion. He could be targeted, or he could be someone who did all this and they're just trying to protect people. But just from what I've seen in the past, you need to see all the facts and not jump to conclusions. Alright, see you guys later.